we are joined by the Director of Research at the University of Wollongong, Dr. Stephen Wilkinson.
Thank you very much for having me.
When do you think we will be able to achieve that goal of zero fossil fuels?
There are industries where electricity is going to be the cheapest and best approach. And then there are industries where it will be better to use hydrogen, particularly those where it's a heavy industry or the hydrogen is used in chemical processing, like the production of ammonia. So we've been working on solar panels for a good long while, making them more efficient, making them cheaper. And you could have said, like 20 years ago, why didn't we have lots of solar panels? Because they were so expensive. If you look at the UN sustainability goals, the first one is no poverty, the second one, no hunger. This is one of those major challenges because the flights may be equivalent to a year's worth of carbon emissions depending on where you live. And you have to then make a decision as to whether you want to fly or not if you want to be environmentally friendly.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ducab Daily. My name's Lachlan Kitchen and it's great to have your company for Season 2 of this podcast series. In 2023, when global emissions hit their peak, before beginning a steep decline, the United Nations declared at COP28 in Dubai it was the beginning of the end of fossil fuels. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the next industrial wave, that of zero fossil fuels. To discuss this, we are joined by the Director of Research at the University of Wollongong, Dr. Stephen Wilkinson. Good to have you along. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
It is the $1 million or $1 billion question. In your experience and your research, a timeline, or when do you think we will be able to achieve that goal of zero fossil fuels?
Yeah, now this is one of the most difficult ones because we can't really tell the future. We can see what we've got now. We can see that we are at the peak, and there are some countries that in the past they had their peaks, and there are some countries where the peak will happen over the next 10 years or so. But as the world, we are at the peak, and we will get a decline. But where will that taper off to zero? And that's still an unknown.
Yeah, because that's the hardest thing economically, and we've touched on this before. That the United Nations, obviously, it's poverty, it's starvation. We still have these challenges, for mankind. But when you look towards the challenge of going to zero fossil fuels, do you think the UAE has an advantage over other countries of net carbon emissions?
Oh, very much so. So if you were to compare the UAE to other countries where they've got, for example, a gas distribution network, the UAE has less of that. So the decarbonisation of a gas network is really challenging because you're burning this natural gas methane in individual houses, producing carbon dioxide in thousands, millions of different locations, and you can't capture that carbon. So rolling back a gas network is really challenging, and particularly where you need heating. In the UAE, where heating is not required, it is significantly easier. So one of the key things that we've got to do to get to zero carbon is the electrification of as many processes as possible. That includes houses, includes industry, it includes our transport systems, like everything we've got to get to zero carbon. So electrification is the first one, and the UAE's got a big advantage with that.
Well, looking at those other energy sources, you mentioned electrification when we're going for zero fossil fuels. Green hydrogen, there are different forms of hydrogen, but specifically, what is green hydrogen, but why do you think it is key for the UAE?
Okay, so we'll start with hydrogen. So hydrogen, when it burns, it is a reaction with hydrogen and oxygen produces water, and it produces a huge amount of heat with that reaction. So you get a very hot flame. Now, water is a greenhouse gas, but it's sort of at its peak intensity within the atmosphere. We get rain all the time because it's at saturation, in comparison to carbon dioxide, which is not at saturation, so it can go up in its concentration. So it is a really useful fuel from that perspective. It produces a minimum greenhouse effect in comparison to other fuels. Now, the Green is where that hydrogen comes from. So at the moment we do produce hydrogen, and we produce it from natural gas methane via a steam reformation process. So that then produces carbon dioxide in order to create the hydrogen. What we want to do, that one's called blue hydrogen, grey hydrogen.
Okay, I hadn't heard that term, right?
And then there is a way that we can capture that carbon dioxide and put it into storage, and then that becomes blue hydrogen, which is environmentally friendly in that the carbon dioxide is not emitted. But the ideal is to use electricity into water in order to split that into hydrogen and oxygen. And then when you burn the hydrogen, you just produce the water again. So it's reversing the same reaction. So you go from water to hydrogen, back to water again, and that's a completely green process.
But what are the benefits do you think that's then going to have? How's that going to change, I guess, the energy spectrum of the UAE?
Well, it's where the hydrogen can be used that is important. So there are industries where electricity is going to be the cheapest and best approach, and then there are industries where it will be better to use hydrogen, particularly those where it's a heavy industry or the hydrogen is used in chemical processing, like the production of ammonia, or in heavy transportation. Those are key ones where if we were to try and do it with electricity, it would be really expensive or really inefficient.
Like trucks and planes and those sort of things.
That's right, yeah.
We'll get on to planes very soon, but we're seeing a rise in solar panels. You know, whenever I drive past the Ducab plant at Jebel Ali, I see the panels. 50% of that plant is powered by solar electricity. Now that the cost is coming down, because solar energy was seen as the future, but it was always so incredibly expensive to produce. Are we seeing that change now the cost of manufacturing solar panels has come down?
Yeah, this is one of the interesting topics from research. So we've been working on solar panels for a good long while, making them more efficient, making them cheaper. And you could have said, like 20 years ago, why didn't we have lots of solar panels? Because they were so expensive. And that's one of the key things for sustainability. If you look at the UN sustainability goals, the first one is no poverty, the second one, no hunger. If we do things that are really expensive in order to produce things, then you just make poverty and hunger even worse. So we've got to do that technological development in order to bring the prices down before rolling this out so that we can maintain our economies.
Yeah, it's the biggest challenge, isn't it? It's the hierarchy of needs, essentially, of looking at the priorities of each country. And that's the hardest element, is when you look at each country and you're trying to navigate a political landscape and everyone's got different ideas. Speaking about different countries, flights. We're in the UAE, in the Middle East. We've got an abundance of opportunities to travel, but obviously that's one of the worst ways we have a carbon footprint. When will it ever be possible to fly with zero fossil fuels, or I should say zero emissions?
Yeah, this is one of those major challenges, because the flights may be equivalent to a year's worth of carbon emissions, depending on where you live. And you have to then make a decision as to whether you want to fly or not, if you want to be environmentally friendly. And there are solutions that are coming in now, like the sustainable aviation fuels. And they're, although they are better than the fossil fuel-based kerosene fuels, they're still not zero carbon. For the future, looking to zero carbon emissions, it is going to be the green hydrogen approach, which
so it's still the combustion engine. We're just looking at renewable fuels.
Yeah, and the time for hydrogen is still off into the future. There are planes that are under development that are aiming to be a reality by 2035, but then once they're produced, they're still going to be the expensive technology that this is at the moment. And it takes the engineering and refinement in order to bring that price down. And until the price is low enough, you can't then have mass transit, lots of people moving around the world using this technology.
And is that the biggest challenge when it comes to technology, energy storage? It's one thing to be able to use fossil fuels to power with solar panels that can power, as we've heard. At Jebel Ali, 50% of the plant is powered by solar panel and solar power energy. But then how do you store that energy? Is that also one of the biggest challenges that you're finding?
Yeah, it really is. So we used to say we've got to stick with fossil fuels. We can't use renewable energy because it is too expensive. Now solar power and wind power is starting to be some of the cheapest energy sources that we've got. So we now start hearing we can't use the renewable energy because the storage of that energy is so expensive, and the solar power generates when you've got good sun, the wind power generates when the wind is blowing, but we want to use the electricity when we want to use it. So the storage element is our next technological challenge that we're working on. And batteries are developing very rapidly, and there are the compressed air storages. There's the ability to put water into reservoirs and maintain a high you pump the water in when you've got excess energy. You let the water flow when you are releasing that energy. There's lots of different technologies that are being developed. One is these concrete blocks where you
Like Lego blocks?
That's right.
Yeah.
You lift them up by crane and you put them onto a stack. And then when you want the energy back, you lift it up and you slowly drop it with a turbine system.
Yeah, when I read about that, the 7-year-old boy in me got very excited because
Yes.
it was like the Lego blocks. There are obviously so many unknowns. We're going into uncharted waters here, to put the terminology quite simply. What are the unknowns in terms of your research and these challenges that are ahead of us to get to zero fossil fuels?
Well, the unknowns are unknown. We can see where we want to go, but it's and we can see the development. So the prices are coming down for each technology, but we don't know where the barrier ultimately will be for the technology in terms of price. You just see the trend and you hope that the trend will continue. And that's the challenge, finding the next approach to the technology that's going to make it cheaper. And it's not quite science, it's more engineering.
Yeah, it's wait and see, learn and listen. In the UAE, we've heard a lot of discussions on the podcast about the circular economy, repurposing, reuse, re-waste, all those sort of aspects. Do you have any examples of how the circular economy is being worked very well in different industries, not just in Ducab, but in different industries across the UAE?
Yeah, this is, again, something that we need to do as a planet, get towards circularity, because mineral extraction is not sustainable, and there is only so much mineral you have in the ground. So you need to then start using those minerals again and again and again in the city. We talk about this urban mining approach, where instead of mining the hills, you mine what you've got in the city to produce again and again. And within the UAE, there are, again, lots of companies that are working towards this. So there's an app in the city that I've seen used, which is it allows you to put the waste product from your industry onto that app, and then other people who might be able to use it can purchase it from you. So your waste then becomes a product for someone else. And then it goes round the economy again and again and again.
A circular approach to the circular economy.
That's right.
Looking forward, the unknowns are the unknowns, but in your research, what should we be prepared for that we're not aware of?
So what are going to be the next steps? So far, we've done relatively easy things at the large scale, like the production of these large solar parks and the government or industry scale changes. Soon there are going to be more things that we have to do at the individual scale. In other countries, it would be things like buying a heat pump or having a hydrogen-ready boiler that you've got to personally pay for. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult. Here, it will be things like more recycling, more things that you do, or thinking about things that you do within your home in order so that you can contribute to what the government and industry is trying to achieve. And some of those processes are in place. Some of them are so micro that it takes quite a lot of logistics and thinking about it to make it
A success.
valuable.
Yeah. Well, not just a success. You're quite right. To make it valuable.
It can't be a loss. So if we take, for example, the recycling of batteries, there are thousands of individual batteries that you buy, and many people store them once they're dead, or just they sit on window ledges or in
sit
drawers.
in bottom of drawers.
But we need to start recycling those so that those minerals that are within or elements that are within those batteries can go back into the economy, and not just throwing them into landfill, because then again you lose those elements. So then you start relying on mining to produce batteries that you then consume and throw away. We need to get that to more circular economy, and it's really, again, micro scale within the house, thinking about what you've got there and how it can go back into society rather than just being disposed of.
Well, Doctor, you've inspired me amongst anything to clear out my bottom drawer and get rid of those batteries in a repurposed way. Thank you very much for your time today, and congratulations on all of your research and work over the years.
Thank you very much.
My guest, Dr. Stephen Wilkinson, the Director of Research in the University of Wollongong, and we look forward to your company on the next episode of Season 2 of Ducab Daily.